Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Paul Stevens, editor of Short-Term Rentals, and welcome to this Rockstars 4.0 webinar on furniture to buy or to rent. This is me, Paul Stevens, editor of Short-Term Rentals. And in terms of webinar guidelines for today, please keep your sound on mute and your camera off if you're not speaking. I'm being ably assisted by my colleagues Joe and Justin today. All of the details are in the chat, so please do post any questions you have there as well. A recording will also be sent round to everyone after today's session. So let me introduce our Rockstars lineup for today, and we're going to start with Andria from Fülhaus. Andria, take it away.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm CEO of Fülhaus, and we offer furniture packages for both rental and purchase, specifically for the short-term rental and hospitality markets across Europe and North America as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrea. And next up, we have Lauren from Loft.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me as one of your guest speakers today. My name is Lauren Maylor, and I'm the creative director for Loft. We are a nationwide business. We're based in Manchester, and Loft was established about 18 years ago, and we provide a seamless end-to-end, people-first focused interior design and furnishing supply solution. So we'll take clients from project inception right through to completion, including sort of upkeep and replacement of furniture for landlords, agents, investors, and developers.
Fantastic. Is that logo I can see in the background there, Lauren?
Pardon?
The Loft logo as well, I can see in the background there.
It is. It's the Loft logo in fabric swatches, so we've got a bit creative.
Fantastic. We have Alex from H&G Presentation Services. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for having me as a panelist, and thanks to everybody for logging in and listening. I'm the Managing Director of H&G UK. H&G was a Dublin-based business, and we are a build-to-rent furniture specialist. I joined the business in May 2020 to launch a UK offering for them. Prior to H&G, I was in banking for 20 years, and most latterly at HSBC, where I headed up the ESG sales team for Europe.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alex. And last but not least, we have Andrew.
Hi there, and thank you for having me. A little bit like Alex, I've actually spent my whole career in finance, and I specialise in helping businesses, be they anything from startup right through to develop, to find hard to find money. One of those things around the concept of, none of us actually have enough money to do everything we really want to. Using other people's money can have a huge impact on how you develop and grow your business. And that's where I can come in.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Angie. So that's today's panel in full. But for context, we have news from the short-term rental space with Fülhaus, including its furniture package partnership with Journey, the launch of its direct-to-consumer furniture rental services, and Andrea's piece for us on renting versus buying furniture 2 years ago. So we're going to be touching on a few of those aspects in the questions today. We're also seeing plenty of new players entering the space. As you can see, stories we've run there on short-term rentals from likes of Conjure, Fernie in Hong Kong, and John Lewis here in the UK. And finally, there was interesting news last week that WeWork is partnering with furniture rental company Feather in the United States to offer workplace design flexibility and customization. Stay tuned to the end. We've got a little bit of a feature we want to come back to on WeWork. So in terms of the first topic I want to go over today, it's how effective interior design can enhance the guest experience, something we're all quite well versed on in this panel, or at least the four of you are. So Andrea, I'm going to come to you first, because there you mentioned before that Fülhaus works with hotels, with short-term rentals, with homes. So how does the way that you actually treat, I think treat was the word that you used, and design a property actually affect a guest's expectations, perceptions, and what maybe does a well-designed space indicate, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, your stay is the first and last thing that your guest sees when they're coming to a location, especially in the short-term rental industry, when you're thinking about, you know, vacation travel, you know, rather than corporate travel. And the way that a guest is received at the space, you know, its cleanliness as much as its design is also, it depicts the way that the guest will be treated by the host as well. So it really is your best foot forward. And, you know, a guest who walks into a very well-designed space is likely to think highly of the actual host and leave a better review, but also think highly of the location and the space and want to return. So, you know, really picking up some return customers as well as some great reviews, ultimately increasing your, you know, revenues and recommendations as well. So that's kind of the perception I think I have of the way that you need to portray good design and the way that a guest gets its first impression from that aspect.
And specifically at Fülhaus, how have you actually seen the impact of effective interior design firsthand, would you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, people do tend to hire us when it comes to wanting to level up their space. We did do a recent study, well, a recent case with a client where they designed 3 units. They were identical because it's quite hard actually to see the difference of a space that is doing better because of its design. You really have to have identical units in the exact same space, you know, that are, you know, catering to the same crowd. So, you know, we actually did do this with a client where we did 3 units and they did 3 units sort of internally without a designer. And our spaces were renting for 50% more. They had better reviews than the spaces that they had left. And it was hosted by the exact same client. So, and this is a huge North American client as well in the sort of, you know, midterm stay space. And, you know, just for that very fact, you know, it's worth investing a little bit more and having a better service and a better design. Yeah, and we'll get into the cost of all of that in just a little bit, I'm sure. So I won't address it too much on this one.
And from a similar angle, I'll turn to Lauren next from Loft, because your company, I believe it launched in 2003. Your website says that you help clients and customers turn ideas and aspirations into lives and experiences. So something I'm quite keen to delve into a little bit more. You've heard a little bit there from Andria already. So at Loft, what exactly are you looking to incorporate into your design when you're creating these spaces? Is it something from a nature or well-being perspective that you most want to implement?
It is, I suppose, from Loft's perspective, we work across various areas within interior design sector and furnishing different types of projects, but we always sort of gravitate back to taking into consideration the resident and their needs within that space. So we really like to sort of drill down and understand their aspirations, how they're going to use the space. We look at sort of the well-being aspects, the aesthetic and the physical influences on that design can have within a space. So we don't just address each project as providing furniture for the sake of providing furniture. We always look at providing the best solution, and that is the best design solution, whether it's scale of furniture or the layout of the space or the materials that we use or the colours. So there's a huge amount of influences that we can have on a project, on a scheme, on an apartment, of varying scales that we always take into consideration. And I think that's why Loft has invested so heavily on, you know, design. We're not just about supplying a chair, we're about supplying the right fit for our clients. So yeah, there's a huge amount of consideration that we take in you know, on all of our projects. So
I guess on that basis as well, it comes down to actually, you know, is this a statement that you agree with, that you actually prioritising and recognising what the requirements of the end user are when you're, deciding on these designs?
Yeah, I mean, actually, one of our mottos is people first design, and essentially we are designing for people. We're designing for our peers, our colleagues, our families, our parents. So we understand that different people require different things from their interiors, and we do a lot of work within student accommodation, build to rent, short-term lets, with landlords, estate agents. So we've got such a diverse knowledge base really on working with different types of people, but we take into consideration the end user, but we also take into consideration the landlord or the host. So we're thinking about things commercially, not just creating a really beautiful interior. We want to make sure that that is a robust, durable solution, not that it just looks pretty. We want it to work for everyone, but we also want it to be an enjoyable space.
And a word there, I think, that we've already recognised that's been repeated is aspiration, that we're trying to get across with this furniture. So, Alex, I'm going to turn to you with this question, and again use that word aspiration. You work across multiple asset classes. I'll let you talk a little bit about those in more detail as time goes on. But from your work at H&G, how do you think a well-designed scheme with top quality furniture actually is able to meet these aspirational desires of tenants, guests, particularly now in these sorts of times?
That's a very good question, Paul. Aspirational is one of the basis of the build to rent sector. The notion of renting actually builds on having a product that's more expensive or higher quality than you could normally afford to purchase yourself. So that's the first aspect. Residents are always going to be attracted because of the furniture or the packs we're putting in are going to be much higher quality than they would perhaps be able to afford themselves. That builds into that aspirational idea. Using our creative team at H&G will use different fabrics and different surfaces and different within the packs to create different looks and different feels. And the most important thing is really for them to photograph well. And that's not just photographing well for the marketing purposes, which attracts the tenants in the first place, but also for the residents' own photography via social media. Social media will be an increasingly important advertising tool for operators going forward. It would be a lower cost of acquisition for customers potentially as well. So we're looking to make sure that the designs we come up with for the end client is, as Lauren said, it's all about the people. The people have to functionality is and durability over substance over something that doesn't really work. It has to be able to be fit for purpose, but also it needs to be beautiful enough to be photographed.
And I know in our previous discussion as well, something that you particularly wanted to highlight was ESG. For those of us who perhaps aren't don't have so much knowledge in this space, could you just explain to us what this is and how exactly does it benefit the guest or the tenant down the line?
This webinar is only an hour, isn't it?
Yes.
Just checking, because ESG is probably one of the broadest subjects I've ever worked within, especially until my time in banking. I think for this webinar and for furniture, I think it's useful to focus it down onto use ESG as a byword for sustainability. So are the products we're sourcing to go into these furniture packs, how sustainable are they? It's a very easy sort of greenwash, if you like, to assume that sustainability is a generational difference as well, and the younger generations have a higher aspirational demand for sustainability. But actually, if you look at recently with the Insulate Great Britain protests, that really showed that sustainability was across multiple generations. So it's appealing and important to now the wider society, and that's important to remember. It's not just Gen Z. And I think it's important. So how do you bring that through into a build to rent scheme or into furniture packs for tenants or into service departments? First of all, where are we sourcing products from? Are they being ethically sourced? That's the most crucial and impactful, and probably also the easiest to ascertain as well. Where is this timber from? Has it been built by people that are signed up to modern slavery, etc., etc.? So as I said, this is, I don't want to go with ESG. We could go across into many avenues, but if we stick to sustainability, you can also look for in amenity space within different schemes. So in higher end schemes, you might have a lot of amenity space. You can look to use local artists for the artwork, for example. That may not work for all schemes, where in more affordable schemes they don't have as much amenity, or the amenity space doesn't demand that level. And the other thing is, you need to look at the final thing on point I make on sustainability is look at the use of innovative materials. So we've actually recently managed to source a mattress that's made from recycled marine plastics. Now I know that sounds fishy, but it's a demonstration of what people can do to be innovative, and it's helped attract tenants to their schemes.
Fantastic. We're going to sort of switch angles here and go across to our finance perspective on the panel today with Andrew. And you've listened to the rest of our panel there, Andrew. Could you, and using your experience as well, what are your main points of advice when it actually comes to financing, purchase or renting of furniture? Because ultimately that is something we want to discuss, both sides of this in today's webinar.
Sure. I think picking up on the comments that have been made so far, you have this classic juxtaposition where you have a landlord, or the equivalent of, who needs to pay to make those rooms look fantastic. And effectively, the more money they spend, the more beautiful, the more aspirational, the easier it will be for them to rent, to get customers, etc. But you're in a position where the more money you spend is normally the more money that comes out of your pocket. But you're buying an asset for your business, which very few of us would naturally do. So I'm a landlord myself, as well as being a financier. And I buy property because I know I'm providing a fantastic service. I know I'm generating income. I know I am helping society. I am hoping that over a long period of time, I might even see some capital appreciation. But when I buy furniture, I'm buying something that's worth 100 today and 1 tomorrow. And that's actually a really poor investment decision from a landlord's point of view. So you've got this classic juxtaposition of how do you do those two things well? Because it's undoubtedly, if you purely look at it from a financial point of view, better furniture, better look, better photographs of the accommodation you're providing is going to get you better customers paying more money. Certainly if you're in a slightly longer term than we're talking about here, you'll get stickier customers as well. But your classic landlord who is trying to find customers to take their properties, the vast majority of those customers are making a decision on whether they want to use that room or buy that room in about 10 seconds. So it's a really difficult one to put all of those things together that we talked about so far and try to make it work for both the person paying for the furniture and the person using the furniture.
And on that basis at Culbone Finance, how are you able to help businesses finance their furniture purchases, and at the same time landlords can still provide these furnished rooms that attract tenants and maybe attract them at a faster rate and at an affordable price?
In its most simple form, it's about using other people's money when you want to grow or expand your business, and that's what I do. So I sit in a bit of a juxtaposition position as well. Sorry, double word there. In that I act as a finance broker, so I'm fully authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK to provide small business finance. But I also work for a number of small business lenders, so I'm a both and effectively. Furniture finance for landlords is actually a very difficult thing to find. There are very few lenders in the UK that want to do this stuff. Why? Exactly the same reason that I just said about landlords. You've got an asset that somebody's buying that costs 100 today and is worth 1 tomorrow. And so therefore a financier is having to look at their risk profile very differently. What we are able to do is to provide 100% finance for customers, business customers who are needing to buy furniture, white goods, soft furnishings, and effectively spread the cost of that equipment for them using a lease structure, which makes it very tax efficient in the UK over a period of time, normally about 3 years, such that at the end of that 3-year period, you have effectively paid for the goods themselves.
Thank you, Andrew. We've got a couple of questions coming in. We've got a question to Lauren about does Loft rent operators outside the UK? I'll let Lauren answer that in the chat and Q&A if you'd like, Lauren, and we can come back to that in a future question as well. We've got questions about sustainability and about trends. So I promise, Richard, we will come back to those shortly. And Andrea, just touching there on what Andrew said, because I know you wanted to come in on the financing point, but for which demographics in particular at Fülhaus would you actually recommend rental financing furniture?
Yeah, so it's not something that I think is for everyone. I mean, to your point, Andrew, I mean, you know, we're constantly fighting to convince people that this isn't a good investment. You're not going to, yes, you will generate more revenue from your rental unit because of good furniture and good design, but it isn't something that retains much value, right? So why not leave that burden of financing and the cost of that onto the lender, or in this case, you know, renter as well, which would be us or another company that does the same thing. And you know, we find that it's also a lot more difficult to convince property owners because of that exact reason, that they obviously invest in assets, and furniture does not equate to an asset in that traditional sense. So where we find it the most efficient and the most effective is when we're talking to operators that are looking to scale at a certain rate, because it is, to your point, other people's money. You know, it's important not to spend very valuable cash on hand on furniture when you can do, with the same amount of funds, you can achieve growing by 4 to 5 more units, properties, or, you know, spreading that wealth out into more scale. So I think it's really important for operators to kind of consider that as the right position to be in to start embarking on the furniture rental. And then there's obviously a cost to that as well, which I think we'll get into. But you know, even outside of weighing the higher cost that there may be in renting furniture or leasing furniture, it still is much more important to use your cash on hand to scale rather than spend it on design and furniture, and leave that to the companies that do that professionally.
Steve, you mentioned there about costs there, but how would you actually go about balancing the cost versus reward of its furniture rental, which you're very involved in, or
yeah,
what would you say?
Well, I mean, you can't look at it as the cost of the increased cost of leasing, or the interest rate, or the added cost of you know, spreading that payment over X number of months or years. You have to look at the added value of adding another unit, another property to your portfolio. So it's not just the cost of, yes, my sofa might be £1,000 or €1,000 if I purchase it, and maybe 1,200, 300, whatever if I rent it, and therefore it's more valuable to purchase. No, because you can buy 3 more sofas for €1,000. And you can have therefore 3 more properties. So I think that's the right way of looking at it. So it's not for everyone. If you are buying a vacation home or a second home, this might not be for you, right? You are probably investing in that space, and this is something that you're going to hold on to for many years, and you're not entirely sure of the longevity of how long you'll own that property. But for those who are doing the master lease model, who are renting a property and looking to scale by renting other properties, that is when this becomes a really, really effective tool to help growth. And that's when companies really have to start looking at this as a good option. Yeah, not so much the landowners and the property owners, more for the scaling operators in that space.
Fantastic. And Alex, you're operating in slightly different asset classes, but nonetheless asset classes. So from your experience, what direction do you see this cost reward balance discussion moving towards now?
I think Andria's nailed with the points exactly. I think she's absolutely spot on. Couldn't agree more with everything she said. What I would add, I think on the reward side, if you like, as this industry in build to rent and maybe in service departments as well is maturing, the level of competition is going up. And to draw on Andrew's point earlier, it's you're spending other people's money. I need to make my scheme, my development stand out from the one next door, or from one around the corner, or from a different one in the city. Therefore, I need to raise that bar. Does that mean them spending more of other people's money? Probably, perhaps, yes. Or is it can just be, as Andrew said, the different demand growth aspects of the client. So you may get a very large pension operator that has got a 40-year time horizon. They can buy the furniture, they can depreciate it over time, and they can replace it every 5 to 7 years. Or if you're a young go-getting San Francisco service department business that has just raised $250 million, and they want to get properties all over Europe, they go, because their valuation is going to be based on how many units they've got today versus next month versus 6 months time. And they'll have some weird, wacky valuation technique, and they'll sell the business for $10 billion next year. So they will want to grow as quickly as possible. They can do that by using Andrew's money. So I think that's the push and pull, if you like. If you're looking to own and hold for the long term, you may look to buy. But if you wanted to grow as quickly as possible for whatever reason, I think renting makes sense. Renting beautiful furniture.
And is it a similar thing you're seeing in the build to rent sector as well?
It is, yes. In the UK, there's a slight anomaly at the moment because we've got the super capex expenditure. So people are actually getting rewarded for investing in their business and capital and capital expenditure. And furniture does class as capital expenditure. So they're getting a large rebate from the government in their tax going forward. It's probably slightly skewed the market, but we're definitely seeing that OPEX CAPEX argument.
Fantastic. We'll turn to Lauren, because I know that you had a particular case study that you want to look at from the cost reward perspective. So I'll let you sort of discuss what that project involves and what you felt Loft got out of that as well.
Yeah, sure. Part of our business is working sort of on HMOs, and we had the opportunity to look at a property based in Manchester, not far from our head office. And we really wanted to sort of use it as not an experiment, but just as a case study for success, really, just to show by investing in design and furniture and looking at that particular project sort of based around the residents, what the outcome would be. So this particular property was a 7-bed Victorian terrace, sort of in East Manchester. And we wanted to look at it. Obviously, we work on a lot of build to rent schemes, so we are appealing to a similar demographic, but we just wanted to see whether we could integrate some of those design practices into HMO design. So this particular project took around 6 weeks. It was a light refurbishment. We looked at each space. We actually removed all the furniture. It was in a really, really bad state. It didn't smell very nice. It had sort of 7 guys in there, a couple of dogs. It had really sort of deteriorated in terms of quality. So it wasn't the aspirational interior you would want to sort of splash over Rightmove. So we thought, right, we'll not throw a huge amount of money at this. It doesn't need it. And we always look at projects in the most cost-effective way without, reducing the overall look or functionality. We don't spend money for the sake of spending money. So we looked at the areas that we really wanted to focus on. Removed all the furniture, light refurbishment, new flooring. So we took into consideration how much, wear and tear it would get being a rental property. We decorated new window treatments, some light fittings, but kept it very, very simple. But we also looked at some of the communal areas, so at a large lounge, which wasn't very well space planned. So we looked at the proportions of the furniture, the amount of occupants we would proceed there to live there eventually. We looked at, the current factors of working from home, creating sort of productive workspaces within each bedroom. We tried to create those workspaces near a window because it is proven that you can increase productivity by 25% by looking at the space and the layout of a room. So we were really trying to sort of analyse each space, create enough storage, create sort of living spaces within the bedrooms. Being a large Victorian terrace, we could do that in most of them, and even things down to the kitchen. It wasn't an old kitchen. We just ended up, respraying, professionally respraying the doors, replacing a couple of hinges, repurposing some of the furniture. We didn't rip everything out. So it took about 6 weeks, and we had the agent round. We'd actually dressed it as well. So that was the other factor that I think had a major bearing on the success of this. Is Loft does rent some furniture and accessories, but purely to dress, not to live on. So we won't, for relocation purposes, we wouldn't rent out furniture to bring it back if it's been lived on. But we do offer a staging service. So we had our design team come in, and they lightly staged it with cushions, soft furnishings, artwork, prints, mirrors, lighting. And we wanted to sort of create that, oh, I want to live here effect. And that's exactly what happened. We had one viewing and it let straight away. And it resulted sort of in this beautiful contemporary look, but still taking consideration the age of the building. But it generated a 25% rent increase. So before it was fully let, we took the accessories back, left the furnishings, and since then, 7 happy young professionals have moved in. So we wanted to show that you don't have to throw a huge amount of money at these projects to make it look design-led, because again, it's not always a good return on investment. And yeah, I think if you're sensible with the way that you approach projects, you can make it look incredible for not a huge amount of money. So yeah, we found that to be sort of a good success story for us and the clients. So.
Thank you, Lauren. And I know Andrew's got some particular thoughts on this, because the first time when we were trying to research the session and decide on some potential questions, you threw up a John Paul Getty quote, Andrew, and it was, if an asset is likely to depreciate, rent or lease it. So how do you go about actually applying this quote to renting, leasing, purchasing furniture?
Definitely goes back to the comments we were making earlier on in terms of just the level of depreciation you get in furniture. Appreciate the comments Alex made earlier on about depreciation and capex versus opex. At the smaller end of the market, that's actually a very difficult thing to do, primarily because most smaller landlords don't have the sort of accountants that can actually help them get through that capex opex thing. And if you jump outside of that capex opex, you actually get hammered by HMRC in the UK for owning furniture. You can't depreciate it, basically, which makes it quite an expensive asset. So we operate a really simple structure that says you don't want to own that particular asset. So we will buy it for you and we will rent it to you over a period of time. And providing you're paying us that monthly rental, just the same for Andrea and Alex, then you get exclusive use of that equipment. And at the end of that period, a leasing arrangement will enable you to be able to purchase that equipment effectively for virtually nothing. There are some models in place to be able to do that. So it can be a bit of a both and. Small business finance, of which this forms part, leasing is a very large part of small business finance in the UK, but there are very few lenders that do what's classed as soft assets, and furniture are soft assets, and so is white goods, etc., etc. Those that do, some like, some don't, but we are able to put together a funding package which is specifically for the business, so it's not personal. This is all business finance, and all we've done is we've taken the concept of leasing, which is often done with cars and plant machinery and all this sort of stuff, and applied it to landlord furniture, white goods, soft furnishings, TVs, etc., and then can scale that right from £2,000 or £3,000 worth of furniture that needs to go into a property, all the way up to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of furniture. Ability to get that is primarily down to the business, but that can be a startup business. We fund startup businesses all the way through to build to rent operators. And if we are talking about smaller or SMEs, small and medium sized businesses, the credit worthiness of the directors of that business, it's a very simple process to get hold of this. I normally do these start to finish, from first contact to a client to delivery of furniture, in 7 to 10 days. So it's not a complicated process.
And on that basis, Andrea, how do you, in furniture rent, how do you go about weighing up those pros and cons of purchasing, leasing furniture? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of what we've already sort of touched on. I mean, you know, the ultimate con is the increased cost, or the, you know, semblance of an increased cost. Sorry, the sun is right in my face right now. The sun, you know, the idea of this increased cost that people right away jump into, you know, before considering the overall opportunity that's available to them if they do go about leasing. So, you know, and therein lies the pros, right? Is that it does enable you to scale a lot quicker. It does enable you to have nicer products that ultimately last longer, to have full services and white glove services, what Lauren is saying, you know, and also to be able, very importantly also, is how to dispose of the furniture in the event you do have to end your lease at the property. So that is also an issue that we saw a lot of during COVID. So when COVID began, a lot of these sort of, you know, recent openings of property, all of these recent properties that sort of had flooded the market in the previous couple of years, were now letting go of a lot of their units because they were scaling down. And what do they do with all of that furniture? So many of them had called me to ask me if I would buy it back. And a lot of them were paying enormous storage fees, and, you know, in hopes that they would reopen and scale up again. But then this increased cost would have ultimately been the same sort of cost that they would have paid had they rented, if not more. And then not to, you know, you're ultimately not a furniture retailer, you know, specializing in the space of sort of what products suit your space, your location, and your target audience. So it's kind of, you know, I find it strange to kind of jump into the world of purchasing, owning, dealing with managing furniture, including the design and the and the staging and the photographs, which are so important, which we do as well, just to, you know, fully encapsulate that service. So The cons are the cons are the one, it will cost slightly more, but not at the beginning, which ultimately allows you to scale a lot faster. And the pros are a long list. I mean, you have from the design, the quality, the full service, and obviously offsetting that upfront cost. So yeah, it seems like a very logical move for a lot of scaling businesses in this space.
I'm seeing a couple of nodding heads there from my family. One thing I can see Lauren, because I'd like to get your perspective on this, because at Loft, I believe I have got this right, that you predominantly work with clients on a purchase basis for furniture and accessories through a sort of small portion request rentals. So how do you go about weighing up these pros and cons? Same sort of question as what I posed to Andria there.
I suppose it's kind of like arguing the pros and cons of each, and what Andrea's mentioned about sort of rental furniture, it's got a huge amount of benefits. I think from a purchasing perspective, majority of our work is on a we'll furnish anything from a room right up to a full building, and we work with an array of clients who purchase. But I think the beauty of Loft is that we have this end-to-end process, and I can't remember who touched on it. I think it might have been Andria, about the sort of what you do with that furniture when when your lease runs out, or if it needs replacing or it gets damaged. We do have sort of an end-to-end process whereby we can offer that furniture, we can install it, but when it comes to the end of its life cycle, we can come and take it away and recycle it. So a huge part of what we do, and I think Alex also mentioned about sort of sustainability of products and where the product comes from and what happens to it at the end of its life cycle, we take very, very seriously. I think we have a 97% landfill diversion rate. We've got a mattress recycling sort of partner, and we look at sort of the end-to-end life cycle of our furniture and what we're putting out there and what happens to it when it comes back. And we also work with sort of charities, so we make sure that all our furniture has a second life if it can. So but in terms of the pros of purchasing, I suppose from our perspective, we can offer a huge array of choice as well. Quite instantly, we hold 2 shovels of stock, and we can deliver next day on a number of our lines. So there's that sort of accessibility, and I'm not sort of discounting that from a rental perspective. There probably is that, but we find that we can offer the clients exactly what they want. They can specify exactly what they want, and we can source it in line with their budget, so it can work out more cost effective if they're purchasing it, and not, if they rent it for 2-3 years, they might have paid for it price over. But again, it depends on the circumstance of the client and what they need at that point in time. So I suppose a con of purchasing is what you do with the furniture if you don't need it anymore. If you're renting it, you can send it back. If you own it, you put it into storage. We do a lot of show homes, and we offer like a plot moving service. So if we have a development whereby they want to furnish one show home to show what it looks like and they sell that, we can help them to move that furniture into the next property. But it's also a good thing for our clients. They can offer to sell that furniture with that particular property. It can be a sweetener to a deal. So there are benefits of purchasing, but there are, benefits to renting. So
yeah, and thank you, Lauren. And Alex, I know on the lease, the purchase decision at H+G, you see it leaning towards purchase. Could you give a reason why you see it going this way?
I think I can sum it up quite quickly on the net yield basis. So in a world of low cap rates, these schemes are being valued on their income streams. So the stronger the net yield, the higher the value of the asset. So you could be an operator that's looking to put a few build to rent schemes together, then sell that portfolio to a pension fund. Or actually, you could just be a large REIT in the UK that's valued off an NAV. So whatever they're doing, they need to maximise the value of the value of the scheme. And the simple way to do that is to look at the income that's generated. So if the net yield is hardly going to be damaged by a purchase of the furniture at the beginning, but if you're using Andrew's money every month, that's going to be reducing the net yield every single month. And that's going to reduce the value of your assets. So instead of being worth 80 million, it's going to be worth 65. And when you add all these up, that's a material difference in a low cap rate world. That's it's big fun. It's not nickels and dimes.
It's interesting. My colleague George has actually posted a really interesting question in the chat, and it's, do the suppliers on panel offer different ranges for different asset classes, particularly in terms of durability? Alex, is that something that you would like to come in on?
I would like to say all of our products are durable. We certainly wouldn't to say that some of them would be less durable, but we do offer different furniture packs for different price points. And so there is, in the UK, build to rent. I think people will initially think of it as being just the higher end one. We've seen all the websites of these amazing swimming pools and terraces, etc. But there is a whole spectrum of build to rent, and some of it starts just above purpose-built student accommodation, and then it goes all the way through to senior living, and then within there's lots of different price points. We haven't seen so far different price points within a scheme. We've seen differentiated product within a scheme to create a pricing tension. When someone walks into the corner apartment on level 10, they want it because it's in this color. And the one on the other corner is the same apartment, but it's a different color scheme, and it just doesn't quite cut the mustard for them. So it creates a pricing tension. With that, you have operational differences. As Lauren was mentioning earlier, you need to then behind that have a whole storage facility and backup of operationals excellence to make sure that the right furniture is in the right units, and then the end of life is important as well.
Andria, perhaps you'd like to come in as well, because you're kind of in the intersection between hotels, short-term rentals, even mid-term rentals now due to the pandemic. Is there something that you're seeing this, are you offering something different between these various asset classes? Are you actually looking to even move into some new asset classes?
Yeah, well, I mean, people ask us for different price points all the time, but it's ultimately different furniture, right? So it's not, you can't have the same sofa at a different price point. So, it kind of depends on the quality and, the sort of materials and, also fabrication and where it's made, and all of this stuff comes into play when pricing furniture. So, at the end of the day, people really do love well-designed things and don't necessarily want to sacrifice good design for cost. They want their place to shine. So we price our product in a package in a way that we know that that's sort of the very average price that should be spent for good quality products in, and where you can save and where you can spend, and certain light fixtures don't need to be as pricey, but chairs actually need to be very durable and beds need to be very durable. So there's different ways that we've priced our product in a package that's it's the same package, and you can get it in any design, which we release every sort of twice a year. So you pay the same price whether you're getting this style or that style, and we have different names that come up from the design team, and there's even some new ones launching very soon. So it's just a very easy way to understand. I have a 1-bedroom unit. I'm going to pay $550 a month. This is in US dollars, I believe. $550 a month for this 1-bedroom, and it includes all of these items. And I pick one of 6 styles, or there will be more added regularly, and basically it outputs what you're going to be purchasing. And we've considered most of this is all built around sort of the short-term rental industry and what are the needs of that market. That does seem to be our primary clientele. But yes, of course, we get contacted all the time for completely different asset classes, from camper vans to yurts to, to student residence properties to hotels. I mean, the whole gamut of rentals, really. And of course, we develop things that are specific to every client, but we've developed this one package that was very just easy to understand, almost at the click of a button, can be purchased and installed.
Great that you're mentioning such a range of verticals, because we're certainly looking to cover more yurts on short-term rentals at the moment, as you may have seen. But I wanted to advance the conversation a bit towards probably my favourite part of the discussion, which is trends. We all like to look at trends and predictions. So I'll sort of move back to Richard's questions. So Andrea, I'll just stay on you for this point. Richard's mentioned what are the next trends, please, whether it's retro, whether it's vibrant colours, pastels, sustainables. What would be the number one sort of trend that you're seeing at Fülhaus at the moment?
It's always pretty particular to the location, but there is one that seems to be consistent in every demographic, in every location, is biophilic. So everything that is natural, very green and earthy. There is, of course, the trend towards sustainability and people wanting to have natural products that they know where they were sourced, that were ethically sourced as well. People also want the products that are within their space to reflect the location and the area in which they're staying, in which the property is situated. So that seems to be a trend that is consistent through and through, no matter where you are. It'll lean in a different color or another, depending on whether you're at the beach or in the mountains. But even at that, the color seems to be very white. White and neutrals are all the rage right now. And we are a company that loves to throw color on a wall, but the clients are holding us back. So and it's also, we propose biophilic as one of our collections that you can purchase also. So, and it's one of the hottest ones that people are trending towards right now. So plant, earthy, natural is the way to go.
And I'll come to Alex as well, because another thing that's here, which is really interesting to hear, is these ethical products, ESG, etc. We mentioned it earlier in the conversation, Alex, but how do you expect ESG with ethical products, recycled materials, focus on sustainability? Do you expect it to grow in importance as time goes on? And is this tied in with other trends as well?
Thanks, Paul. I'm glad you've been looking forward to the future trends question, because as 20 years in stockbroking, it's probably one I've been dreading the most, you're asking. But I think you're right, sustainability is going to only ever be increasing important. We've worked with one client who wanted to have a completely sustainable furniture pack. They had a very, very long-term outlook. I doubt there's that's currently you'd get an economic return, i.e. the underlying resident tenant isn't really willing to pay that extra. And the reason why they're more expensive, the furniture are more expensive, simply because the availability and the products themselves are more expensive, and they're not made in the vast quantities. So sustainability does mean more expense. But one where we have been advising clients is actually looking at the inventory packs. So a trend for you, it's not necessarily a design trend, but an inventory trend. Gen Z, they are much less likely to use television in the same way generations previously. So actually we're advising people not to put media units in. So if you're saving money on a media unit, can you then put that saving into a coffee table that is made from recycled plastic bottles, etc., or something along those lines. We've even seen, I was with a client yesterday, a small scheme in the south of England where they're not even putting TV points into any of the units anymore. So that's a trend that's definitely occurring, and will move forward. Sustainability is significantly important. And I also think the other trend I'd pick up on, again, not really a design trend, but is the functionality aspect. So no units previously, pre-COVID, sorry, have been designed for two sharers to work 2 or 3 days work from home. They just haven't been designed for that. And in London, you could quite easily expect two 25 to 35-year-olds. One could be an M&A lawyer for a large US law firm, and one could be in a corporate finance for a large US investment bank. That's not conducive for working from home. The compliance departments will have heart attacks. So how do you, going forward, how do we cope with that? Is it done in amenity space? Is it done by having some innovative desks that can be slotted together? Then at the end of the working day or the working week, they can be disassembled, slid under the bed or the back of the wardrobe, so it's not taking up the space. So functionality of space is important with the ESG, I think, as well.
Fantastic.
Stability.
And I'll come back to Andrew as well, because we haven't actually heard yet really about your opinions from the finance perspective of this, but what do you envisage for the future outlook of the furniture rental purchase landscape that you can inform our audience on?
I do think it comes down to where you sit in the market. So if you are in the build to rent sector, that tends to be, partly because of the investments and who's investing in those, that tends to be a lot more at the cutting edge of where the market is at the moment. If you are talking about, for instance, a HMO landlord with 5 of his own properties and that's his pension scheme, that looks a very, very different market in terms of trends to the ones we've just been talking about, for instance. And then I think I'll make this connection, which might be slightly erroneous, but very roughly, there are 2 million odd individual landlords in the UK. It's of that magnitude. Those that would look seriously at the sorts of conversations we've been having this afternoon will actually be quite a small percentage of that number. Sometimes it's quite easy to break it down into, have those people had much in the way of training and development for their property business versus some very traditional landlords, etc. But that's not exclusive. And I think you see different trends in those different areas. From a financing point of view, unfortunately, the finance industry within the space that I work in is so far behind the curve, it's unbelievable. So the word ESG does not even launched onto their radar yet. It will do, but probably in about 10 years' time. And so it's not substantial in terms of where the trends are going. It's actually a very fixed market with a very fixed mindset, which is why I can create a product niche for myself, because there are so few people that look at it the way that I do. But the if you want the basics of the trend, 5 years ago, it was the classic wooden pine bed and magnolia walls. Yeah, we're all smiling about that, and probably everybody on the call is smiling about it as well. There are still millions of rooms in the UK that are out for rent that look like that. And they do rent. They have a place in the market. But I think the trend, certainly, my view would be that the trends are much more driven by the furniture suppliers than they are by the customers in that particular size of market. And because I work with small and medium-sized businesses all the time, that's the market I primarily work within. So, for instance, I know that Lauren's business, similarly to Alex's, are looking really seriously at how do we create products from marine plastics. And that will be products that they are able to deliver into the rental market, into the sales market for landlords over the coming year. And that will drive the trend rather than it being driven the other way around.
I can just see Richard's comment there, don't knock magnolia. So that's to end the conversation on today. I want to say a big thank you to all of our contributors today, to Andria, to Alex, to Lauren, and to Andrew. We had so many more questions that we could probably ask, but we'd probably be here for hours. I do invite all of our attendees to reach out to our panelists today at the emails that we've provided earlier in the chat. So we're actually back for another Rockstars webinar on Tuesday the 9th of November. That's at 4 p.m. GMT, and that is on how is social media changing hospitality as we know it. So please do go to the link in the chat and sign up for that. And we're really looking forward to our inaugural in-person Urban Living Festival taking place live in London at Tobacco Dock on the 26th and 27th of October 2021. We have a fantastic range of industry experts. A couple of them you can see on screen now who will be speaking at ULF, and you can also now access a very special 20% discount code to attend. You can see that on screen now. It's STR20. So please do get back to that by the time the code expires on Monday, October the 19th. I'm also reminded that there is the opportunity to tour WeWork Devonshire Square as part of day one of this year's ULF. So just linking back to the context slide on WeWork earlier. For sponsorship opportunities, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Details are on the screen now. And of course, again, I'll just reiterate, please feel free to contact us via our various channels and our speakers at the emails that we've already provided in the chat. All that's left to say is a big thank you again for listening, and to all of our speakers, and we'll see all of you again very soon. Thank you very much.